was an extraordinary announcement to make a political choice to hand a tax cut worth £55,000 to people who earn over £1 million a year at a time when most people are struggling is politically unjustifiable. But worse than that, as Rachel Reeves said, this is the end of Levelling Up and the return of trickle-down economics. It doesn't work. You cannot continue to pile more and more wealth towards people who are already doing well and expect to grow the economy by uncapping bankers' bonuses. We've seen it before, it didn't work, and it's time for a different approach. You can already see the reaction from the markets. The value of the pound has fallen. They've created enormous instability and uncertainty. But just trying to funnel more and more to people who are already doing well. This is the same sort of approach that David Cameron tried, that George Osborne tried, that Rishi Sunak tried. They cut stamp duty. It didn't get more young people into and first-time buyers into home ownership. They tried to cut taxes for the wealthiest. It didn't create growth. It just meant that people stashed more and more of that wealth in offshore savings accounts. The only way to grow the economy is to get money back into people's pockets. That's why we've been pressing them for smart strategic investments, get good jobs back into communities across this country and get Britain working again. We strongly support the idea that the government ought to step in and help people with energy bills this winter. Most people simply won't be able to afford to meet those costs if they don't, and we've been pushing for it for a year. The problem is who pays. We wanted to tax the profits of the big oil and gas producers. They've decided to load those same costs onto low and middle income families who are already struggling. The reality of this budget is a huge transfer of wealth from people who are struggling to people who are already doing well, a huge transfer of wealth from our regions to London and the South East. There is nothing progressive about this budget. It is a deeply regressive move that will signal a perfect storm for Britain as we go into a very hard winter.
This budget shows how much the Conservatives are totally out of touch with people. You know, millions of families and pensioners are struggling with soaring bills on energy, on food, on mortgages. And it looks like the Conservatives either don't get it or don't care. We needed a plan to help people, and this isn't a plan for our economy. Well, Liberal Democrats have a plan for economic growth. It's very different from the one we've heard today, which I don't think will work. The Liberal Democrat plan will work. We want to make our industry more competitive with energy efficiency to help them reduce the cost of energy. We want to make sure we're helping small businesses and entrepreneurs and self-employed far more than the government are doing. We want to make sure that trade is easier for people. This is a serious economic strategy from the Liberal Democrats. I'm afraid we don't have a serious economic plan from the government at all. Well, Liberal Democrats want a fairer society, a more united society, but I'm afraid the Conservatives want to increase income tax on the less well-off and cut it on the very wealthy. So next year, because they have frozen the income tax allowance, the point at which you start paying income tax, lots of low-paid people will be starting paying income tax, and lots of people on low and middle incomes will pay more income tax. But if you're rich, the Conservatives have given you a nice income tax cut. If you're a millionaire, you're getting a tax cut of over £40,000 a year. This is unfair, it's wrong, it's the opposite of levelling up, and it won't help grow our economy. Well, I wish they had frozen energy bills as Liberal Democrats argued. Liberal Democrats earlier this summer were the first party to say energy bills should be frozen and any rise this October should be stopped. I'm afraid the Conservatives haven't done that. Energy bills will go up by another £500 next week. So they went up by £700 last April, now another £500. People's heating bills this winter will be twice what they were last year. And the reason I think the Conservatives haven't done this and helped people properly is because they are out of touch. They've refused to do a windfall tax to ask the oil and gas companies, who are making tens of billions of pounds in profit they never expected to make, they've refused to ask them to pay more to help people properly with their energy bills. And I just think that is wrong. I don't think that's fair. And that's why Liberal Democrats are saying today that the Conservatives are out of touch with the public. It looks to me like investors around the world are very worried about this economic package, whether it's the currency markets with the pound falling, whether it's the cost of government borrowing, which has gone up on the back of this. I think people are signalling no confidence in the Conservatives. So it's not just members of the public who are struggling, who feel the government is out of touch. It's international investors also.
Well, I think it's very clear from what's been announced today who the government's priorities are. We've seen the top rate of tax being abolished, we've seen investment bankers' bonuses cut, we've seen enormous borrowing, massive borrowing by government at a time when interest rates are going up, rather than go to the excess profits of the oil and gas producers with a windfall tax to fund some of the announcements today, and an attack on workers' rights yet again. This is their 7th growth plan in 12 years. The previous 6 have failed. This one will fail as well. What they're proposing will not work. Look at what Joe Biden said this week. We are sick of trickle-down economics. It does not work. You have to go from the bottom up and the middle out in order for everybody to share. Everybody contributes to the wealth of this country. Everybody should be able to share in the return on it. But that's not what's happened today. This is about making people who are very wealthy even more wealthy. And businesses have not been asking for corporation tax cuts. We've got a ridiculous situation today where the energy package for businesses means that oil and gas producers themselves, who've got offices in the UK, will have help with their energy bills. It's just nonsense. This whole thing is just casino economics. It's irresponsible and it's reckless. Energy bills are far too high. It's the number one issue that people right across the country are concerned about. There's £170 billion of excess profit sitting with the oil and gas producers. That's not been touched. The government instead have borrowed at a time when interest rates are going up, and it's those people, those households, who will be paying for that borrowing for generations to come. So they've made a very clear political choice. Leave the big oil and gas producers alone and make sure that the public ultimately pays. Some people will see lower taxes, but it's clear from the reaction of the markets today that they are not convinced by the Chancellor's plan. We don't think it's going to work because it's the sort of thing that's been tried before and hasn't worked, and by not allowing the Office for Budget Responsibility to publish their baseline forecast, which they have prepared for the Chancellor on his announcements, there is no transparency, and I'm sure that's part of what's worrying the markets.